Okay, we're going to demonstrate forcing entry using conventional forcible entry techniques on an outward swinging commercial door, or it could apply to a residential structure. Not highly likely to see that, but an outward swinging door. We can tell it's outward swinging because our hinges are exposed and we don't have our jamb exposed. So the first thing, Captain Caton and driver engineer Fuselier are going to be conducting this. We're going to walk through it step by step. So the first thing Captain Caton's doing when he comes in, he's doing that global size up, looking in all different directions, seeing what building conditions look like. Then as he approaches, he's going to try before he pries. He just verified he has an outward swinging door. He tried if there's any sort of locking mechanism, he can try and pull against that, because sometimes doors are just propped open or propped closed. So now from this point, he tried before he pried. Now he's going to go straight into shocking his door. So he's going to shock high and shock in the middle and shock low. And what he's doing by doing that, he's loosening any paint that may be stuck on the jamb. He's trying to identify any areas where there's potentially secondary locking mechanisms. Sometimes these doors have slide locks, and by shocking a door, especially on an inward swinging door, you'll be able to feel some bounce or the lack of bounce with that additional locking mechanism. So we want to practice that on outward swinging and inward swinging doors. Any door we encounter, we're shocking the door. So he shocked his door high, middle, and low, and now he's going to move into a position where he's looking to create a gap. A lot of these doors, so here he's able to put his tool. You guys can see he put the adze end of that tool directly into that gap here between our casing and the door itself. A lot of these doors on an actual occupancy, they're not going to have that gap. It's going to be a very, very small, narrow area, so you can't get that tool in there. So there's a couple ways around that. First thing you can do is you can crush your door. And so he's going to take the the back end of this adze on his Halligan and hit the door an inch or two off of the edge of the door. And what that's going to do is that's going to peel back some of that metal, creating a gap along that seam. So he's going to give it good hits. I mean, these aren't little teeny baby taps. You're really hitting this door hard. Another thing he can do is turn around and get that adze right up against that seam and call for a couple strikes from his striking firefighter. So that would be the same technique. Okay. So at this point, he's set his tool. We'll just move along from here. He's created a gap. So now he's going to rock this tool up and down, trying to accentuate that gap and get a bigger gap and try and loosen everything up in there. He's loosening the locking mechanism, loosening that door hardware. And so now at this point, he feels confident. Notice how he went up and down? It's an up and down motion with that tool. He's not pulling back towards his body or in towards the door. It's rocking that tool up and down on that adze. So now at this point, Captain Caton has his tool. He's gapped that door. He's created a gap. Now he needs to set his tool. So he's going to call his striking firefighter in, driver engineer Fuselier, and he's going to call for strikes or drives.
Strike. Strike.
A strike. Okay. Okay, stop. We'll stop there. Stand by. So a single hit is a strike, and that's every single hit you call for strike. That's one hit. And when you call for drive, it's continuous hits until you hear stop. So if you are the striking firefighter during this operation, you're not hitting the Halligan until you hear one of those commands, either strike or drive. It's all dependent on what the firefighter on the Halligan is asking of you. Okay, so now he has that tool set. He called stop. That cued in driver engineer Fuselier to move out of the way. He knows he's set that tool and he's about ready to force this door. So you notice body positioning. He's starting. Look at how his feet are spread apart. He's not going to go flying backwards. He's keeping that door wrapped around there, using whatever means necessary. If he needed to get additional leverage, he could get an axe head back behind there. If you want to just put that back up. And driver engineer Fuselier, go ahead and put your axe head back right up against here. There you go. That may provide some additional leverage in that forcing operation. So there's multiple ways once you get that door to that point to force that door open to get that additional leverage. But that's a basic entry on an outward swinging door.
Okay, we're walking up to our building. We're sizing it up as we're approaching. We don't see any dangers. Now we're sizing up the door. We see the hinges on the outside. we don't see the jam, we know it's an outward swinging door. I'm going to try before I pry. Doesn't open up. Now I'm going to shock the door. I'm going to shock high, shock middle, shock low. Okay. We're going to crush the door. Now we're going to create a gap. Strike, strike, drive. Stop. Door control.
Now Captain Caton and driver engineer Fuselier are going to demonstrate conventional forcible entry on an inward swinging door. This could be commercial, residential. The method is going to kind of remain the same with this. The ways we can tell it's inward swinging, we do not have our hinges exposed. We have no hinges exposed, and we can see a jam, right? A door jam. So that's going to tell us that this is an inward swinging door. All the same steps are going to remain the same upon approach. They're sizing up their buildings, looking for life hazards, any fire conditions, pertinent information around them. They're taking everything in. As they approach, they're going to come in, and a lot of the beginning steps are going to remain the same. They're going to come in, they're going to size up their building, they're going to try before they pry, right? We always try before we pry, and then they're going to shock the door. You want to shock high, shock middle, and shock low. Same thing, the shocking is loosening up any locking mechanisms and also helping us to identify where those locking mechanisms are. At this point, Captain Caton has placed the adze end of the Halligan behind that door jamb, between the door jamb and the door itself. And he may need a couple strikes from the striking firefighter with the axe. He'll call for those. So he's just trying to set that tool between the jamb and the door itself. Now at this point, Captain Caton's rocking that tool in an upward and downward motion. This isn't back and forth lateral towards his body. This is going to be up and down, up and down. And you guys can see how he's creating a gap there. So at this point, he's going to call for gap from the striking firefighter. He's going to have that firefighter come and hold a gap. Something else you can do, if you carry a wedge, you can wedge this door yourself. If that's easier to do, or if he'd rather not put his tool in because of space constraints, things like that, if you have a wedge on you, which you always should, you should be able to hold that gap on that door. So he's created a gap. Notice he's putting the fork end of the Halligan bar up against the door, between the door and the door jamb, and it's going to be wrapping the door at this point. So the forks are wrapping around the door at this point. Get a nice close up there, Bustos. Good. Okay. So at this point, Captain Caton's going to call for some strikes or drives, depending on what he sees fit.
Strike, 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 drive. Stop.
So now he called for gap. Now he's flipping those forks around. You notice he took that tool out, flipped it around 180 degrees. Now those forks are wrapping the jamb and not the door. And that's what's going to provide the leverage to actually force this door. So now he's going to call for strike or drive, depending on what he needs.
Strike, drive, stop.
Call stop. He's able to force that door with door control. Driver engineer Fuselier, I want you to take note. He did a good job moving with that tool.
Strike, 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 drive. Stop.
As the firefighter on the Halligan moves that tool, the striking firefighter needs to move with that firefighter, not the other way around. So, well done.
All right, sizing up my building as we walk in. We don't see any life threats. We're going to continue to size up our door. We can't see the hinges, but we can see the jamb. We know it's an inward swing commercial door. We're going to try before we pry. Strike high, strike middle, strike low. Okay. Strike. Strike. Okay. Okay. Now I'm wrapping the door. Okay. All right, ready? Okay. Strike. 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 drive, stop, gap. All right. Strike, strike, drive. Stop. Door control.
Okay, now firefighter or driver engineer Fusilier is going to demonstrate the baseball swing on this is a simulated residential inward swinging door. It's a preferred method just because the speed, you don't need a second firefighter to help strike. We could go back to conventional wrapping the door and then jam itself. However, this baseball swing is the preferred method because it's quick and easy. Single firefighter needed. So everything remains the same during his size up. He's looking up, down to all the sides, checking fire conditions, alternate means of entry. He's verifying that it's an inward swinging door. Typically these residential doors are going to be solid wood doors at their front door with a wood casement and wood jamb. And that's going to play to our benefit with forcing these doors open. However, you could run into a side door where you have something else going on and you may need to go back to your conventional forcible entry techniques. These are to be used with wood, wood jamb and wood door. All right, so now he's going to come up, driver engineer, he's going to shock the door, high, middle and low. Once again, that's telling him where his locking mechanisms might be. And now at this point, he wants to aim. Where he's aiming with his swing is typically going to be 6 inches above or below that locking mechanism. So kind of the way this prop is designed, our locking mechanism would be here. He's actually striking that door casing here. When he strikes, he's going to want to come close to the door. He doesn't want to be far off because he wants to create that leverage. So you'll notice when he strikes, he's trying to get up close to that door. Good. And now it's going to be an upward and inward movement. There you go. Single motion if possible. And then he's going to door control, right? So he's reaching around with the tool to control that door because we don't know necessarily what's going on the other side of that door. So we always want to be cognizant of that. If we are having issues here because of this baseball swing and we get the tool to a point where we're here and we don't have enough leverage, we can always call for someone else to bring another tool in to fill that gap in back here to create more leverage. Or if we know that we've buried this tool deep enough into that door jamb, you'll have less vertical movement and more horizontal movement to pull that out. And the whole point is we're trying to split this door jamb and the casing with the pike end of this tool, and then that allows us, our deadbolt, to just blow out right out of the back of this door casing. Very quick, very efficient method. Works great with apartment buildings, hotels or motels, where we have to go door to door and clear an entire area really quickly. And but we want to make sure that we're always trying before we pry, because people a lot of times, especially in this town, may leave their front door open. So make sure you're trying before you go through with this destructive method. All right. Checking my door, inward swinging, residential, try before I pry, shock, shock, shock. Door control. One other point we want to make, especially pertains to outward swinging commercial doors. When we attack with our adz and we get that adz in too quickly, we start making our turn prior to actually wrapping the door, we have a tendency or can run into problems and do something called skinning the door. And that's basically where the adz sits behind this seam, and we'll get driver engineer Fusilier to give me a couple strikes on this to demonstrate. Strike, strike, strike. Okay, so if I had him basically striking my tool, I think I've wrapped this door. And I'm going to get some horizontal pressure against my jamb to try and force this out. You notice I can't get any pressure because my tool is actually sunk into this door. So I'm just going to spend this entire time thinking that I'm in a good position, and I'm actually fighting myself. This is called skinning a door, and this is what we're trying to avoid. So when we're setting our tool, we really have to be leaned over to ensure that we clear that seam on the back side of that door, and we're able to get a good force.